Tonight at 10, efforts to tackle juvenile crime as another innocent victim is laid to rest. Fox 45 News digs into the numbers surrounding crime among young people.
Baltimore set to enforce a curfew in 2 weeks, trying to limit juvenile violence across the city, while some argue it won't be effective.
And major changes at Muncie as Director Shantae Jackson is stepping down amid questions about transparency. A former mayor behind the creation of Safe Streets explains why the program isn't what she envisioned.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Good evening, I'm Vincent Hill.
And I'm Maxine Stryker. On this Mother's Day weekend, another somber reminder of the impact gun violence can have on families.
Yeah, hundreds gathering in Wheaton tonight, remembering the shooting victims across the state and demanding action from state and federal leaders.
One mother shared her story of losing a son to the relentless violence, one she says is all too common.
My son was at home. That could have been anybody's child, you know, so we have to think about what can we do differently to make our streets, make our homes, make our environment, our neighborhoods safer for our kids.
Moms demand action. They put on the event. The group is asking Congress to reinstate the federal assault weapons ban. Over 200 Mother's Day of Action rallies are taking place across the country, trying to bring an end to the loss of innocent lives.
Yeah, and here in Baltimore, many of those lives are juveniles, and the number of kids committing violent crimes is at an all-time high, according to Baltimore police. Families of victims killed by gun violence lighting candles tonight and calling for peace.
It's hard to think of any place left in our society that has not been in one form or another scarred by gun violence.
One of those victims laid to rest Saturday, Fabian Sanchez Gonzalez, killed during an armed robbery at T-Mobile in Canton.
I miss my brother every single day, every second.
His accused killer, 18-year-old Arthur McCayden, and his accomplice, his 14-year-old brother. One of the latest violent crimes committed by juveniles, sounding the alarm at City Hall.
We're seeing a spike in youth violence across the city.
According to BPD, the spike in numbers for the year is astounding, especially when it comes to homicides.
The 67% increase in youth homicides, 55% in youth shootings.
10 juveniles have been arrested for homicide, all between the ages of 10 and 17. Each with seemingly easy access to guns.
I believe 8 of the 10 homicides involve gun violence.
And it's not just homicides and shootings seeing an increase. So far, 37 juveniles have been arrested for street robbery, 68 for assault, and 7 for carjacking, including 12-year-old Jalen Richards, on house arrest for that crime, according to his grandmother, when he was gunned down last month with an assault rifle.
Jalen don't know how to drive. He was just hanging along for the ride.
But the most troubling number could be the amount of teens charged with crimes so brazen they're charged as adults.
We have one 14-year-old this year that was charged, 4 15-year-olds, 30 16-year-olds, and 40 17-year-olds.
Adding it up, that's 75 Baltimore City youth charged with capital crimes.
Governor Westmore signing a series of bills this week, none aimed at addressing juvenile crime, though. They're focused on supporting Maryland's veterans, expanding health care, and increasing retirement funds. He is also expected to sign Senate Bill 1 on Tuesday, which limits where legal gun owners can carry their firearms. Republicans want him to veto the measure, arguing it's only creating confusion and is a punishment for legal gun owners.
Am I going to get some completely innocent client that has a permit to carry, that isn't sure what they can possess, and they walk in the wrong place on the wrong day unintentionally, and they end up being prosecuted in court? That's the big concern here.
Fox 45 has been pressing state leaders on addressing youth violence, but this year's session came and went without significant action. Baltimore City leaders taking matters into their own hands, implementing a summer curfew, though, set to begin in 2 weeks. But how it's going to work is still unknown. Mayor Scott is hoping it'll bring juvenile crime down, but many are skeptical about its effectiveness. As juvenile violence spikes across Baltimore City, will a youth curfew set to go into effect Memorial Day weekend help curb the violence?
We will be enforcing the youth curfew.
The mayor announced the curfew on Easter after 2 teenagers were shot at the Inner Harbor, but he's been vague on the details of exactly how it will work.
And Memorial Day is when it will start, and Memorial Day is when we'll be showing everybody what we're and how we're going to be doing, and doing it in a in a more evolved way than we have before.
On WBAL's C4 and Brian Neiman show this week, he was pressed for answers yet again.
So how will it be enforced, and when will it go into effect?
We're going to do the enforcement with youth curfew, building off the success that we had with the Squeezy Collaborative, with the same kind of dual approach.
But still was tight-lipped on just how it will be enforced.
Will a cop be able to go up to a teenager and say, hey, you don't look like you're 18. You're going to have to get off the street. Is that going to be allowed?
That,
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But if anyone's thinking that this is just about like going out and saying, oh, young person, you can't be there. It is, but it's much more than that. And we've been folks have been trying to simplify it, thinking it, as you said, it's going to be the end-all be-all, and nothing's the end-all be-all.
Sergeant Betsy Smith, spokeswoman for the National Police Association, says juvenile crime is spiking across the nation.
There's a couple of reasons. One goes back to the COVID lockdowns, where teenagers, young people were largely unsupervised. We also see, again, the vilification of law enforcement, where young people are told police are bad. And by the way, don't be afraid of the police. Don't be afraid to do things wrong.
She's not the only person skeptical a curfew will work.
Well, it's kind of like gun-free zones. Who listens to, who reads the gun-free zone signs and says, I'll put my legal gun away? Legal gun owners. So people who are likely to commit crimes are not likely to pay attention to curfews.
And with police operating at a shortage of more than 500 officers, she questions if this is the time to put more work on their plates.
Do you have enough police officers to be able to, enforce curfew laws when you don't have enough police officers to even investigate homicides?
This brings us to our question of the day. Do you think there should be a special legislative session in Annapolis to tackle the juvenile crime crisis? The poll's just open. You can vote right now at foxbaltimore.com/vote.
2 people are injured after 2 separate overnight shootings in Baltimore City. A 39-year-old was shot along Vincent Court just after 2:30 a.m. He was taken to the hospital. In Baltimore County, a man was shot along Holgate Drive in Essex. He's in the hospital with life-threatening injuries. Anyone with information on either shooting is asked to call police.
And a 39-year-old man is dead after a major crash this morning in Wicomico County along Route 353. That crash involved 3 passenger vehicles and a tractor-trailer, injuring at least 16 people. It happened around 3:45 this morning. Police say that tractor-trailer rear-ended one of the cars, causing a chain reaction. The driver of that car died, and police say one of the other vehicles involved was a van that was carrying 12 people. The Wicomico County Sheriff's Office is investigating.
Some changes coming to the mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, as Director Shantae Jackson is expected to step down next month. Her departure leaving more questions in an office already dealing with transparency issues, as Fox 45 has reported on for years. Taylor Stewart has more.
Director Shantae Jackson's exit comes at a crucial time in Baltimore City. This as juvenile crime is on the rise and an expected summer surge in crime in the weeks ahead.
Now the office mainly responsible for programming to deter people from crime is looking for new leadership.
The mayor's chief of staff and his communications director have all resigned. They've all left, and now Shantae Jackson is leaving.
Shantae Jackson, the director of the mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, is out as of the end of June. It's one of several recent resignations in Baltimore City leadership, and it comes just 2 weeks ahead of Memorial Day weekend, the rollout of Mayor Scott's summer crime initiative and the start of the city's new juvenile curfew.
You cannot have the confidence that the community needs in the type of programs that he wants to do when he's got these, everyone at the top, all of his leadership, from his communications director to the Monty director to everybody, playing musical chairs and leaving at a time that's so critical.
The Neighborhood Safety Office runs Safe Streets, touted by city leaders as a flagship violence intervention program. And a key piece of the planned programming Mayor Scott says is forthcoming this summer.
People telling us that, many of them aren't even open. The doors aren't even open.
Euripsy Morgan, an advocate for the people for elected accountability, saying this about Safe Streets.
This organization piece, we've had, I believe, 4 or 5 community meetings. We're going to do all 14 districts by the end of the year. And at every single one, we have heard the same thing. There are a lot of suspicion. There's a lot of suspicion and a lot of questions, a lot of allegations about what's truly going on at Safe Streets locations.
Questions that Fox 45 has asked relentlessly for years. Morgan says Baltimore residents should start asking too.
When you have that level of suspicion within the community, it requires a level of assessment that hasn't happened under the previous Muncie director.
Taylor Stewart, Fox 45 News.
Former Mayor Sheila Dixon founded the Safe Streets program, modeling it after what Chicago was doing at the time. But in an exclusive interview with Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost, Dixon says what's happening now is not what she envisioned.
Looking at the way the Safe Streets program is organized now, over a decade later after it was launched, do you think it's effective?
Let me say this, not knowing how all of them are run, but have talked to individuals and have watched different activities that have taken place within Safe Street, I question whether or not, and of course missions change all the time, but whether or not it really has the overall rooted mission from the way it started. Rallies and the give outs that they do, I mean, that's great and that's fine, but I think the emphasis has to be on being out there during times when the rest of us are asleep, figuring out what's happening, what's going on.
Today's question of the day, we ask if you believe a special prosecutor should investigate the Safe Streets program. 99% of you that voted said yes. All right, let's take a live look at the Inner Harbor. We saw some rain throughout the day, but finally things are starting to dry out, and hopefully it'll be that way tomorrow as we celebrate Mom.
Meteorologist Jasmine Lomax here now with a look at our Mother's Day forecast. Jasmine, hopefully a little better than today.
Right? Yeah, I mean, it just wasn't great. Lots of rain throughout the day. It was very gray and gloomy, but tomorrow, sunshine returns. Great for Mother's Day.
For Mom.
It's also going to be another nice and warm day. So that's the good news if you're planning on spending any time outside. If you have to drive anywhere, the weather looks great. Right now, though, we're mostly dry as that rain continues to clear. Temperatures sit at 64 with mostly cloudy skies over Baltimore and light winds around 3 miles per hour. Across the state, temperatures are mainly in the 50s, still pretty mild, and overnight these numbers will continue to drop. Notice on the HD radar, showers are continuing to push toward the coast and away from our area. We'll stay nice and dry overnight, and showers will taper along the eastern shore over the next few hours. Overnight, though, temperatures drop to the 50s and the low 60s in some areas. Then we're headed back to the 70s. I'll have a look at what to expect for Mother's Day and in the days that follow in my full forecast. Back to you.
Coming up, new candy trucks in Cherry Hill are for more than just sweets, how they're hoping to provide access to basic needs in a food desert.
President Biden giving the commencement address at Howard University, his comments on student debt relief as Republicans continue to push back on his plan.
Debt ceiling talks delayed, and Wall Street is getting nervous. I'm Atra El-Nashar with why the head of one major bank says he's setting up a war room.
Let's go live now to Capitol Hill, where debt ceiling talks have stalled yet again. A meeting between the president and congressional leaders was scheduled for Friday, then postponed. President Biden addressing the debt ceiling talks today.
Well, I think they're moving along. It's hard to tell. We've not reached the crunch point yet. So, but there's real discussion about some changes. But we're not there yet.
Both sides agree time is running out to make a deal before the June deadline.
National correspondent Atra El-Nashar reports on the warnings from the financial sector about panic from delaying a deal.
A second debt ceiling meeting between the president and congressional leaders postponed, narrowing the already short timeline to avoid economic catastrophe. An exact X date of default isn't known yet, but the Treasury says it could be as soon as June 1st. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office said Friday there's a significant risk the government runs out of cash in the first 2 weeks of June. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen reluctant to weigh in on what would happen then.
There are potential different paths that could be taken
if that doesn't happen. But there is not a single thing that can be done that will save the United States from considerable economic and financial damage.
Yellen says she's set to meet with senior bankers next week when she returns from a G7 finance minister meeting in Japan.
I want to understand how they're thinking about the debt ceiling. And what I'm hearing is that it is a grave source of uncertainty that is one of the things that businesses are really concerned about.
JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon says he's holding war room meetings every week, and he guesses around May 21st, they'll be every day, talking to clients about how they might get through a potential default.
We might get downgraded. The last time we were downgraded, we had like 65 or 70% debt to GDP. Now it's 105. Now our deficits are 2 or 3 times that we had back then. So, we better be very careful.
Panic, he says, can lead to irrational decisions.
I remember even in 08, people were selling certain securities at 40% of what they would be worth if we had a Great Depression.
At this point, almost all agree the most irrational decision is allowing the country to default in the first place. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atrel Nishar reporting.
President Biden giving the commencement address at Howard University today. In his speech, he took aim at Republicans fighting against student debt relief.
Same opposition who received relief loans, I might add, to keep their businesses afloat during the pandemic. Members of the Congress worth thousands, even millions of dollars, most of which didn't have to be paid back. Yet, they say it's okay for them, but not for you.
The Supreme Court is currently weighing the future of Biden's federal student loan forgiveness plan. If it survives, Republicans in both chambers of Congress are pushing resolution to overturn the relief program. They argue the plan will force Americans to pay off debt that's not theirs.
College graduations happening all this month across Maryland, and it's high school graduation shortly after that. Make sure you're sending us your favorite pictures from commencement ceremonies through Chime In. We'll be sharing them on air and on social media throughout the next few weeks. Take a look at this. Baltimore Peninsula and Cherry Hill Strong teaming up to fight food insecurity in Cherry Hill. They're preparing 2 candy trucks, which offer much more than just sweets. The trucks are a way to bring fresh food and drugstore items into areas that may not have easy access to a grocery store or a pharmacy. Organizers say it's a more reliable option than convenience stores, especially for people who want to eat clean.
There's a lot of food deserts. There's been a lot of research behind what those food deserts are, and if there is a convenience store or source where there's not healthy access to food. So their partnership with Black Yield Institute is also that, where you want fresh vegetables, you want fresh foods, and how do you go about getting that? And so between SNAP benefits being decreased now that, it's just a growing need. When you think about just your basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter, food is always first.
Many of the food items are locally sourced using excess food from farmers markets across the city. Organizers stress this is a temporary fix and hope that Cherry Hill can have a full grocery store soon.
North Carolina's governor says no on an abortion restriction measure. His strong words after going door to door to convince Republicans to take his side.
A strange hiding place for an Ohio drug dealer, why he felt the need to get in a dryer when police came knocking on his door. An 8-year-old, one of 3 people hurt in a shooting in Albany, New York. Police say a man shot through a window into a barbershop, hitting the child in his torso. One man was shot in the foot, another hospitalized with a shoulder injury. Police are trying to find a motive.
A temporary end to the violence in Gaza as Israel and the Islamic State agreed to a ceasefire. The move caps 5 days of fighting between the two forces, which saw 2 killed in Israel as well as 33 Palestinians inside Gaza. Among the casualties, an 80-year-old Israeli woman and at least 13 Palestinian civilians.
North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper is vetoing a bill banning abortion after the first trimester. A crowd of over 1,000 abortion rights activists and voters rallied at the state's capitol in support of this decision. The state's GOP-controlled General Assembly is expected to override the veto, a move Cooper describes as detrimental to women's health.
I know one thing for certain.
standing in the way of progress right now is this Republican supermajority legislature that only took 48 hours to turn the clock back 50 years on women's health.
After lawmakers approved the ban earlier this month, Cooper called on 4 moderate Republicans to oppose a veto override. He spent the last week traveling to those lawmakers' districts in hopes of persuading them.
Get your leg out. Now.
Bizarre scene in Ohio as police find a man hiding inside a dryer doing a drug bust. The man says he had too many warrants and didn't want the police to find him. And he's not the only one with a strange hiding place. Police found another man hiding under the stairs and a woman in the attic, all now facing drug possession charges. 7 people were arrested in all.
Ahead at 10:30, the BPD police shooting of a 17-year-old sparks questions. A former officer shares the training police go through to identify an armed person before they see a weapon.
The border is not open. Not the word from President Biden, but critics say the numbers prove otherwise. I'm Scott Thuman in Washington with a look at the latest efforts to come up with new solutions.
And after a little rain today, we're back to dry and gorgeous weather for Mother's Day. We'll be in the upper 70s. We stay in the 70s again on Monday and Tuesday, but next week we have the chance for more weekend showers. Coming up, I'll have a look at your full Mother's Day forecast and when to expect rain in my Weather Authority forecast.
New details on the 17-year-old shot by Baltimore police Thursday after police say he was armed with a gun and refusing to drop it during a foot chase.
The boy's mother identifying him as Mackay, saying he lost a kidney, spleen, and half a lung when he was shot in the back. Police say he was showing characteristics of an armed person. Here's their explanation.
When they called it out, they said the individual was characteristics of an armed person. That's why they started to approach him. As soon as they approached, the suspect took off running. During the foot pursuit, the officer gave several verbal commands for him to drop the weapon. He could clearly see the weapon in his right hand as he was running. As they turned into the alley, the officer discharged his weapon and struck the suspect.
Police say the officer involved in that shooting is part of the Southwestern District's police action team.
The incident is raising questions about when police officers are trained to shoot and when to hold their fire. Fox 45's Keith Daniels explains.
The shooting of a teen by a Baltimore City police officer. 17-year-old Mackay in the hospital now, critical condition, with a gunshot wound to the upper body. Cell phone video we obtained shows the aftermath of that shooting. The teen, who police say had a gun, seen lying on the ground as an officer renders aid. Tonight, questions after that shooting.
What that gets down to now is probable cause or reasonable suspicion.
A closer look at the rules of engagement, notably when an officer thinks someone may have a gun. Garland Nixon, a retired officer with the Maryland Natural Resources Police, which has statewide police authority, weighs in. Nixon, at one time a major with the NRP's training division, tells us what training an officer might rely on when that officer suspects someone might be armed.
There are a number of things, not the least of which being, you look for a bulge, you look for something in the belt. And keep in mind, you look for the actions of the person. You've been trained to look, okay, this is where a person puts a gun, this is how it looks when it sticks through their shirt, things of that nature.
The BPD officer shot Mackay Thursday afternoon near Frederick Avenue and South Catherine Street in southwest Baltimore.
Hey, Jordan!
Investigators say the officer was sitting on a stoop talking to a resident when he saw Mackay and believed he may be armed.
I can't tell you what the officer saw, but then when they called it out, they said an individual with characteristics of an armed person. That's why they started to approach him.
Police say Mackay ran off. A foot pursuit occurred. Investigators say Mackay was holding a gun, ignoring officers' commands to drop the weapon. Then one officer fired more than one gunshot, hitting the teen.
Well, at that point, when they realize that there's a weapon, they understand it's a dangerous situation, and they have a right to act.
Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
City State's Attorney Ivan Bates celebrating some recent big case wins by his office and prosecutors, calling the number of convictions and sentences secured as, quote, staggering. Included in the release 4 murder convictions, also the vehicular manslaughter guilty plea by Gardnell Carter, a former Monty employee who hit and killed Charles Buster Banks. Mackenzie Frost has a complete update on that case on foxbaltimore.com.
Take a look at what's left behind after a tornado rolled through Texas overnight. This is in Cameron County on the Gulf Coast. At least one person is dead, 11 others injured. Winds clocked in between 85 and 100 miles per hour. Emergency response teams say the timing of the storm left them with their hands tied.
We didn't have the benefit of warning, obviously. The hour didn't help, middle of the evening, early morning. And unfortunately, like you said, it just literally popped up out of nowhere.
Officials say none of the 11 injured people face life-threatening injuries. Good news.
Yeah, Jasmine, thankfully nothing like that here, but we did see some rain today. But
yeah.
How are we looking for Mother's Day?
Oh, it looks much better. I mean, today, another weekend, another day with rain, but we dry out right in time for Mother's Day. So if you have any plans, if you're spending some time outside, it looks perfect for that. We've got temperatures in the 70s as we start the upcoming week, and the days that follow will be nice as well. Currently, our temperatures sit at 64, and we're now mostly cloudy. We've got light winds around 3 miles per hour. Notice on the HD radar, we're mostly dry here around Baltimore. We've still got a couple of stray showers along parts of the eastern shore. These will taper over the next couple hours, and after midnight, we'll stay mostly dry. It's all part of this larger system. That low-pressure system's continuing to push toward the coast, and the rain is following. So overnight, pretty mild. Right now, though, temperature is mainly in the 50s and the 60s. We will drop to the 50s, so as you step outside in the morning, pretty mild. Then we've got that nice warm-up on the way. Our temperatures reach the 70s with a good mix of sunshine and clouds. We're looking at a nice start to the work week with temperatures in the 70s and dry weather. However, for the weekend, there is another chance for showers, and these could have impacts on your plans. As we head into the night and tomorrow morning, we'll wake up to temperatures in the 50s with mostly cloudy skies. We'll have a few breaks of sunshine as we head into the afternoon. Our temperatures reach the 60s and the 70s, keeping us slightly above average. We'll stay nice and dry into the evening. Temperatures still remain mainly in the 70s. Then overnight and into Monday, those clouds gradually clear. We'll start the morning with lower temperatures and more sunshine. By the afternoon, we keep those sunny skies and temperatures reach the 70s. Perfect for spending some time outside. And really, the days after look good too. We're talking mostly dry on Tuesday, dry on Wednesday and Thursday, possible late showers Thursday night, and that rain continues into Friday. We're talking a few spotty showers, not a washout for your Friday, but on Saturday we have another chance for scattered showers. That could have impacts on your plans, but of course, we're 7 days away. Things could change. 57, though, overnight with mostly cloudy skies. Then tomorrow for Mother's Day, it looks great. 63 around 8 a.m. Then temperatures rise to the 70s by 11. We're looking at our high temperatures reaching the mid to upper 70s, keeping us just above average. We'll have a good mix of sunshine and clouds and a light breeze. This is all followed by temperatures reaching the low to mid 70s on Monday. We'll have more sunshine. 77 on Tuesday, 73 on Wednesday with plenty of sunshine. Then on Thursday, another day with 73-degree weather. We're talking the mid-70s on Friday with our next chance for a few spotty showers. This is followed by the mid-70s and rain on Saturday. Back to you.
Two sides of the border as Title 42 came to an end this week. Long lines of people waiting to get in on one station and virtually no migrants waiting elsewhere along the border. The end of pandemic-era restrictions means Border Patrol agents can no longer turn people away for COVID-related reasons. Some border towns are concerned about an extended surge in migrants, while others say the surge has already leveled off.
We're starting to see more order on the border. We're starting to see an orderly process of migrants not coming at the numbers that they were. And the numbers that are crossing now are under the capability and capacity of Border Patrol and CBP and law enforcement on our border.
The White House is trying to send a message discouraging immigrants from showing up, even threatening harsher penalties. But as chief political correspondent Scott Thuman shows us, critics say it's too little too late.
A steady stream of immigrants loaded into Customs and Border Protection vans on the way to be processed and apply for asylum. Many more still waiting to cross.
The president's going to use every tool that he has, as he has been for the last 2 years.
President Biden accused of talking tough now with that message the border is not open, but also failing to close it or keep close tabs on immigrants once they've entered. The number of encounters at the southern border continually trending higher at an alarming rate, even breaking some records so far this fiscal year.
All right, here we go, guys.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signing a law this week forcing hospitals and companies to check the status of their patients and workers. While Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton has filed more than a dozen lawsuits to counter the administration, contending overburdened schools, hospitals, and law enforcement are saddled by the federal government with unsustainable costs, as billions of dollars are spent supporting illegal aliens residing in Texas.
This is a decision that was made by President Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and congressional Democrats to open up the border to what is nothing less than an invasion.
Democrats argue Republicans don't mind the chaos if it wins them TV appearances and votes.
I do wish there was some good faith like there was back in the days of George W. Bush, and realization that the system is broken. It's going to take both parties to fix it.
But reports indicate Democrats, too, may be fractured over solutions. Senator Sherrod Brown possibly joining centrists on the Hill, urgently trying to renew a different version of Title 42 for 2 years, which many Democrats and the president oppose. The blame being spread across Washington, but by default, President Biden taking a lot of the heat and trying to prevent it from becoming an even larger problem going into the 2024 campaign. In Washington, I'm Scott Thuman.
And as migrants continue to trickle through the southern border, some Maryland school systems are bracing for impact. In Prince George's County, at least 40% of students are migrants or kids of migrants. That's about 3,500 students. And school officials say that number could double during summer enrollment.
This situation, because a lot of people have been waiting for a long time and been in fact in Mexico for a long time, and there are large groups there, I would say it's probably going to be like double that.
County leaders say they're willing to welcome students with